All right, welcome folks to the team leader meeting for May. So we can just go around and start with introductions. So I am going to start and then I will pass it over to the newest member of the Strong Schools Maryland team, Jamal Turner. He is a part of our organizing team, but I will have him introduce himself. So yeah, everybody knows me already. Maya. I am a resident of Baltimore County. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I enjoyed art class in school, all of the arts. I will pass it over to Jamal.
Okay, hello everybody. My name is Jamal Turner. I am I'm newest member, as Maya mentioned, to the Strong Schools Maryland team. I'm a team of 10's organizer, and I am excited to be here with you all. I am a lifelong resident of Baltimore, and proud graduate of both Baltimore City College and Morgan State University. But my favorite part about just school in general growing up, it was the friendships and the camaraderie. So all of us being able to rally around, whether it was the teams or just having our own like little networks, it was great. I didn't like cliques, so I like to talk to a little bit of everybody, but um, that's I think for me it was a social part. So I think it's fitting that now I'm an organizer. So I'm thankful to be here in the space with you all, and thank you all for allowing me to assist in this effort.
Thanks, Jamal. Thornell, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Thornell Jones. He, him. I'm from Anne Arundel County. And what I enjoyed most about school was when I was in graduate school, there were so many young Black Americans finally coming to college, not enough. And so it was good that we worked together to increase the number of Black students there and to change the quality of life for everybody. And I'll call on Eddie.
Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Edward Lee. I'm from, I guess we call it Worcester County / Wycomico County. My residency is in Worcester County. I work in Wycomico County and spend time there. What did I enjoy about school? College. I was a high school dropout, went to service, came back, finished high school, went to college, and it was a phenomenal experience for me in that I went to a Black college, Cheney University, Cheney State College at that time. And I was unprepared. I was unprepared for college. And I found phenomenal Black teachers. Dr. Conyers, I'll never forget that lady as long as I live. She wrapped her arms around me as a person, as a student, as she did with other students, and she was renowned at that college for helping students. Literacy at that point, coming out of the service and dropping out at 17. I mean, it was just phenomenal. That Black institution helped shape my my adult life and who I am today.
Thank you for that. Anne, did you want to go?
Yeah, I am from St. Mary's County, and I report back to the NAACP, the Educational Committee of the NAACP in St. Mary's County. My pronouns are she and her, and I actually did my schooling, even my first higher education degree in Belgium, so it was a very different system. The subject I enjoyed most was history, which I know is very controversial here today. I just read today that the scores in history had gone down dramatically. I did my MA and PhD at the University of Oregon in comparative literature. And what I enjoyed most about that was the very international atmosphere. There were students of all nationalities represented.
Thank you, Anne. Janice?
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Janice Lepore, she, hers. I'm in Baltimore County. I'm involved in education on a couple of levels. I'm the psychologist who specializes in evaluation and school consultation. I'm also the parent of 3 kids. I enjoyed most, I think, my time as a theater kid, doing a lot of drama and theater activities.
That's awesome. Gotta love the theater kids. Vicky?
Okay, I'll go. I'll talk about high school because I won't be attending, but the 50th reunion is coming up. I went to high school middle school, high school in Palo Alto, California when we came back from overseas. And starting in 9th grade, I got involved with activism, and a peer from that time posted about her work with the United Farm Workers Organizing Coalition out in California with Cesar Chavez. And I posted, oh yeah, I was 14 and we picketed against table grapes outside of Ernie's liquor store. But we were doing the anyway, in a nutshell, it was the extracurriculars and that passion for activism. Education became my passion as bringing about change because I did relatively well in public school. And I had some of my best friends were struggling because back at that time, nobody was diagnosed with whatever. And they tended to give up. And I didn't think that was right. I thought everyone should be accommodated. And I still believe that. And I can pass it on to, let me see who hasn't gone yet. Next screen, Rich Cerulo. I can't pronounce it, Ceruolo.
Oh, Rich, we can't hear you. No, we can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Rich is having trouble with his sound.
Yeah.
Pronounce his name Cerulo.
Okay. Rich, you can type in the chat and introduce yourself. I'm sorry, we can't hear you. And welcome to Dr. Starfstein and Joan. Coincidentally, our 2 speakers for today. Hey, hello.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yes, thank you for coming here. We were just doing introductions. So Dr. Starfstein or Joan, either of you want to go first?
Sure, and I'm so sorry because I had 6:30 down, but I'm Josh
Oh,
Starfstein,
good.
at Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. I'm a faculty member there. I used to be the health commissioner of Baltimore City and the health secretary of the state of Maryland. And I've been working on some issues about schools that maybe we'll have a chance to talk about later.
And I'm Joan Roache. I also had 6:30 down. I live in Worcester County. I'm team leader there.
Thank you. And I see Rich put in the chat introducing himself. Rich is with the Parent Advocacy Consortium, and we advocate for kids with disabilities like myself, says Rich. ADHD and dyslexia reading made the difference in my life. Thank you, everyone, so much for joining us. Apologies for mix-ups with times. Thank you for your flexibility. I wanted to first off remind folks that we create a monthly kind of like rundown updates document that covers things that we may not get to today. So please do see that. There are a lot of different things going on between the AIB and local budget season is upon us. So we'll discuss that a bit more later, but there is the link in the chat that will also be sent out via email as a follow-up with all of the updates that you can reference. For our agenda today, we will briefly go over the organizing priorities. Then we will have a presentation from Dr. Joshua Sharpstein and Catherine Gong. Please correct me if I'm saying that wrong. Thank you. From Johns Hopkins University, we're so happy to have you. We'll have a just announcement when the next Blueprint Coalition meeting is. Joan is going to highlight the awesome work that her and her team are doing in Worcester County. And then we will have time to open up to the group with updates and our call survey for you. Our organizing priorities. So right now at the state level, our focus is to ensure the blueprint is fully funded. And our local focuses are building relationships. So with our blueprint coordinator engagement and Board of Ed members attending meetings and just testifying about the importance of community input for blueprint local implementation plans as they are carried out, since they were created and are available now on the AIB website. And so now I will actually give up my screen sharing and hand it over to Dr. Sharfstein. So, and Catherine, so some folks may be familiar with the 21st century schools and just the attention that the physical school buildings are getting themselves now in terms of being updated, having to be updated, how old they are, and how that impacts learning. So we are joined by Dr. Sharfstein, who is the current Vice Dean for the Public Health Practice and Community Engagement at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. That was a mouthful, but thank you so much, Dr. Sharfstein and Catherine for joining us.
Great. Thank you. I thought it might make sense. And we have about how much time, Maya, do you want for the presentation? How much for questions and answers?
I We had about 10, 15 minutes, the same kind of time that you have for our team.
Okay, great.
Mhm.
I think there are a couple things to show you very quickly, and
Won't make any difference
and
for her because again,
and, I want to just show some general information first, and then we'll cut to some of the slides, Catherine, that you have. So but let me start by sharing first. I'm going to put in the chat the website that I'm going to show initially, if it's okay, just a little bit of background. I'm a pediatrician, and I've always been interested in schools and health and the relationship between schools and health. And so I've been looking for data across Maryland to understand different aspects of school conditions, like the shape of the buildings, whether the ceilings are falling in or there are holes in the, in the walls, that relationship between the conditions of the building, health of the children, and learning. So that's what this all pertains to. And so the way we started was by looking at these issues in Baltimore City, okay, in particular with respect to the rest of the state. And we put together this website that is up online now, and it explains why the physical conditions of school matters. There's a lot of evidence that they're linked to health conditions. And then we looked at the different counties by different ways of thinking about the school conditions. So we looked at the age of the schools. And so Prince George's County and Baltimore City have by far the oldest schools. This is looking at years over or under average. Montgomery County and Howard County have by far the youngest schools. I can make this a little bigger maybe. Okay, is that better? A little bigger. If you look at the school components that are 30 years past their lifespan, the largest is in Baltimore City, the second is in Prince George's County. You can follow the red for Baltimore City. If you look at the remaining useful life, the shortest remaining useful life for school buildings is in Baltimore City. If you look at serious hazards to health, Baltimore City has by far the most in the state. Now, you might ask, where am I getting the data for this? So I'm getting the data from the school facilities survey that the state of Maryland did during the pandemic, where they sent people out to look at every single school condition in the state. More than 1,300 schools were inspected. Okay. This shows all the risk categories. Baltimore City had the most components in them. And then we looked at things like which would have the lowest kind of type of HVAC system. Baltimore City by far the lowest. Anne Arundel had the most expensive systems. And ultimately, we also did with some colleagues at the School of Education, some interviews with students who said things like there would be ceilings falling in, classes where when it rained, you would have to put a bucket there. Not having air conditioning, you cannot focus when it's 80 degrees and you're sitting down. I mean, I sweat a lot, so I'd be sweating in class. It was terrible going to school. So we also found that over the past 5 years before the pandemic, Baltimore City's school students missed more than 1 million hours of school because of the physical conditions of the schools. Like the schools were closed early. And we put up an interactive map. So what we found in that first phase of the work, knowing that there's some relationship between school conditions and outcomes, is that there's a huge variation in school conditions in Maryland. And in particular, Baltimore City has some major challenges. The second phase of the work is, well, what is the evidence in Baltimore that there's an association between the physical conditions of schools and student achievement? And that's where I had a secret weapon to do research, which is Catherine, one of our students, because she jumped in and did some amazing data work. So Catherine, why don't you share your slides now? So if that first phase was like, there are problems with the school buildings, the second phase, or well, what do those problems mean? And so we wanted to see whether the school buildings that had the problems also had more absenteeism and lower test scores. Does that make sense so far? So these were the questions we asked. Are the conditions of the schools associated with the kids not going to school absenteeism? Are they associated with lower test scores? And if so, is there a racial distribution to the kids who are particularly Black and Hispanic? Are they more likely to be going to schools in the worst conditions associated with absenteeism and lower test scores? Next slide. So I'm not going to go into this in great detail, but we use that same survey to get the conditions of the schools. And the most important condition that we'll be showing you, the way we measured it, is called the AMDCI. And that involved every inspector looking at every component of the school and seeing how old it was supposed to be, and whether it was affecting the learning environment. But it did not include projections for the need for more space, because that was that we were looking at the concerns right now. That's the AMDCI. Go ahead to the next slide. And we got absenteeism and test scores from the State Department of Education. We looked at proficiency in elementary and medical school, elementary and middle school. High school, we looked at the ACT and SAT. So we looked at math and English proficiency for elementary and middle school students, and ACT and SAT for high schools. Next slide. This is a bit technical, but basically what we did was we looked to see if we were lining up all the schools by their conditions, with the best schools on one side and the schools that were falling apart on the other, and we were walking along, was there a drop off at some point in absenteeism and test scores? That's what we were trying to figure out. And to figure that out, we divided the schools into 10 deciles, 10 groups, and we checked whether there was a drop off at each group. Go ahead, Catherine, to the next one. And what we found there were about 65,000 kids in each group, each decile. Next slide. And if you look at the AMDCI, if you want to point to where that is, Catherine, that would be good. These red numbers show that there is an effect. Yeah, that's good. This bottom part, it showed that for absenteeism, you had a 10 or 20% increase in absenteeism for the 10% of schools that was in the worst condition. So when the schools were in the worst condition, the kids were much less likely to go to school. Go to the next slide. And this shows the ACT scores and the SAT scores. And the ACT was about 4 points lower in that worst group of schools, which is a lot. And the SAT score was about 80 to 100 points lower in that worst group of schools. So the schools with the worst conditions had 20% ballpark more absenteeism and lower test scores for high school students. And go to the next one. And this is the proficiency. You can see that the kids testing proficient is down about 20% in English proficiency, and about 20% in math proficiency in the schools that are in the worst condition. So if you wanted to find the kids who are most absent with the lowest proficiencies and the lowest tests, you would go to the schools that are in the worst conditions. Does that make sense? That's what we found. Next slide. And then we look to see, well, who are the kids who are experiencing both the worst conditions and the greatest absenteeism and lower test scores? And Black students were 77% more likely than their non-Black fellow students, and white students were less likely to experience that. So there was a racial bias in which are the kids that are in the schools that are in worse conditions with the worst associated consequences. And then a couple other things that we did is that we wanted to see whether this would hold true if you don't even count Baltimore City. Because someone might say, well, maybe this is just because of Baltimore City. Baltimore City has the, worst conditioned schools like I showed you before. And maybe Baltimore City just happens to have more absenteeism and lower test scores. When you take Baltimore City out of the equation, it's still true that the schools that are in the worst condition have the highest absenteeism and the lowest test scores. Next slide. Almost done here. So what we concluded here is that there is an association between the condition of the school and how the students are doing academically. That this adjusted MDCI, the AMDCI score, really does show that, and is probably a good statistic. But we recognize that our investigation here had some limitations, including that it obviously depended on data after the pandemic ended, that there are likely some unmeasured confounding factors that predict both poor school conditions and worse school outcomes. And we did not distinguish between magnet and non-magnet schools, although in some cases, like Baltimore City College, where my kids went, it was a magnet school in very poor condition. So it may be that the actual, associations would be stronger if we considered for that, but we did not do it, so we don't know. I think that's it. Is that right, Catherine? So sorry, so Catherine, anything you want to add before we take any questions?
No, I think that sums it up. And yeah, this is the last slide, so I'll stop sharing my screen.
Great, Maya, I hope that was okay. We did the fast version to see if there are any questions, or hopefully you got the gist of what we've been working on. Let me tell you why this is really important. In the next year, the state is going to make decisions for how to prioritize capital funding. And I think we think it's pretty important to focus on those schools in the worst condition where the kids are most absent and have the lowest test scores. Any questions from anyone?
I'll ask. I'm Vicki Vestrich in Baltimore County, and as my team actually is a member of, we have a Baltimore County Education Justice Table coalition, because there are lots of I believe the poverty rate in Baltimore County is now, for students in public schools, 61% get the free and reduced meals. And there's a whole separate organization, Student Support Network. So my question was, have any counties asked you to do the same analysis for their public schools?
Well, I appreciate that question. The answer to that is no, because we haven't really shared this analysis very much.
Oh, okay.
Like the sneak preview of the
Okay.
analysis. We're in the process of writing it up, but it would be possible to look in Baltimore County and do that. In fact, I think Catherine, probably it's like one line of her code and she could probably do this pretty easily. So we have the ability to look at this in a lot of different ways. And it's a great point. If somebody asked us, we would give them the answer.
So could the coalition or is there?
Yeah, just send us an email and we'll take a look.
Okay, so I can share this link. I think we have a coalition meeting the third week of each month. So may I share the link or not until you publish?
Oh, this link is public.
Oh,
This
okay.
link didn't have all of this data.
Okay.
So this link is public, that I put here. But the data that we shared is not public at this point.
Okay.
But if you have a question, I'll put my email in here. You should just email me.
Thank you. Thank you. I think I can the trend without having the actual numbers, the trend, I think I can summarize and share with them. Yeah, the Baltimore County Teachers Union, TABCO, is one of the coalition members. So.
But it'd be interesting to know, in Baltimore County, is it the case that the schools in the worst condition are the ones that have the lowest test scores? And
that I would suspect that.
we could tell you.
Thank you.
I know a lot of the, oh, go ahead, Brenda.
Yes, Dr. Starfstein, thank you so much. I'm sorry I missed the earlier part of your presentation. I had my time mixed up. Is it possible for me to arrange a conversation with you about school funding overall? I have so many questions. When we are talking to folks in the field about the blueprint, I'm getting all kinds of feedback and mixed messages. And I said, I've got to find somebody who can help me understand.
I wish I were that person for the whole question about school funding. That may be Maya. What I have focused on is the capital funding, the actual buildings, but like all the stuff about like the programs and I want to come to you with that meeting and hear and understand it, because I find it a little confusing myself. But like how much is going for concentration of poverty schools and what kind of extra funding is available for certain types of schools and how that all works, I don't really know. I'm like a laser beam focused on the construction.
Okay. I'll keep searching until I find, maybe it's a combination of people who can help me understand some of what's going on. But as a follow-up question, in terms of capital funding, is there any, and I'm asking particularly about charter schools, because that's kind of a, it's a hodgepodge of stuff. And whether or not charter schools are usually included in capital funding projects?
Generally speaking, they are not, unless they are taking place in city school buildings.
Right. Okay.
So sometimes there's a charter school on the same location as another school, but when they own their own building, they're kind of on their own, is my understanding from a capital perspective. Now they could raise money from the county, for example, for that, but it's not part of the normal capital funding process at the state. If anyone knows differently, please. I'd say I'm 90% sure of that answer.
Okay.
I'm like a web browser that gives you a sense of what, how sure I am of that answer. But I think what I know is that we've looked at different, discussions of this. For example, the survey didn't even, it surveyed the public school buildings. It did not survey charter buildings that are not part of the public school building.
I was thinking in particular about buildings that the school district has sold to charter schools, and many of them are in great need of repair. It's almost.
I don't think that's a separate. I think that's an interesting issue, but not really part of this survey. I think if it's totally sold, then it's not. But in some cases, charter schools are in the building, and so it's a little different.
Okay, that helps a lot. You triggered another thought, something else to investigate, but thank you.
Any other questions for Dr. Starfstein and Catherine?
Just a more general comment, Maya, before we log off here. I think that there's been tremendous advocacy for school funding in Maryland, which really makes a difference. And I know Strong Schools Baltimore is like huge for that. And so I thank you all for the work that you've done. It's amazingly important for kids. I think we're partly focusing on the conditions of schools because it hasn't been of so much focus at the state level. It's largely left to counties, and there are some pretty serious gaps between school systems. So that's kind of, it's partly because there's so much success on the school funding side generally that we're focusing on this. But as we look at this, the buildings themselves really carry forward a lot of inequity. It's like you can see it. It's like the structure, and it's expensive to fix buildings. But that first, chart that I showed with all the extra years, if you ask where, I have a thought experiment. Let's say every school were exactly the same age in Maryland, and then you snapped your fingers, and a school would get older or younger based on what it actually was. So everyone started at the average, and you had to, give coins to the schools that were younger and take coins from the schools that were older. So the school's 5 years over average, it would give you 5 coins. Then Montgomery County and Howard County would be getting a lot of coins, and Prince George's County and Baltimore City would be giving a lot of coins. That there's just it's an enormous gap in the structure, and that I think reflects a different kind of educational funding that is important, and we see the impact when we look at this kind of data. Joan?
Are the studies the data you used on the condition of the schools? I assume the state did that. Is that public information that is online somewhere?
It is public information insofar as they gave it to us. I don't know whether they have posted the full data set though.
Okay.
And we got the data set. It's a little bit of a bear to deal with, and we had to write all these programs to get it into a way to kind of assess it. But but it is available, I think.
I guess I was thinking that there was so much discussion about the HAV systems and are they up to code and everything. It would be nice to be able to go somewhere and see which schools are up to code or not.
Yeah, there are different ways, there are different questions that they can answer, this data can answer about the HVAC system. Like if you wanted to know the average age against how long they're supposed to last, you could do that. If you wanted to know the replacement value, which is really a measure of what kind of equipment you have, like there's some more expensive types of equipment or cheaper types of equipment people can get. Is it a Pinto or a Cadillac system you have in your school? You can answer that. You can answer whether the inspectors thought it was interfering with the learning environment in a particular school. But it may not answer exactly the question you have, but there are like associated questions. Okay. So yeah, if I have my email here, if you think there's something that would be really relevant, you guys know what data would be useful, we might be able to help.
Thank you.
All right, thanks so much for including us, Maya.
Thank you, Dr. Starfstein, and thank you so much, Catherine, for taking the time to join us and for all of the research and work that you have put into this. It is so important that we see this and know this. Thank you. All right, thanks for joining us. We are now going to well, first of all, any feedback? What did you guys think? Thumbs up?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I know we typically don't have a lot of like speakers at our meetings. I want to integrate more speakers. And if you have any recommendations of like different subjects you want to cover, definitely send me a text, a DM, whatever, like a chat, because I definitely want to have more folks come and join us and us to kind of like learn together. So thank you for.
It was interesting because it seems not really represented in the blueprint. I was wondering, well, under which of those 5 pillars would it fit? And it seems almost like a kind of invisible aspect that the blueprint doesn't address, but probably should address more.
Yeah, absolutely. There's still more to advocate for, a lot of ways that inequity shows its face. So even down to the buildings. So it's definitely important to talk about. Sorry, I think I saw Rich. Were you going to come off mute and then Vicky? Or did I miss that? Is your audio working?
I switched devices.
Yes. Okay. No. Great. We can hear you.
So once again, we have a system that's broken, right? The pieces are no longer, well, the blueprint was supposed to bring it all together and increase equity for all students, right? But we've left each district on its own when it comes to its school buildings and its capital funding and the maintenance of those buildings. And so that's really not baked into the recipe. So yeah, for sure, there's definitely more work to be done. And how do we join all these forces together to get that money? You know, do we lobby the new governor and tell him, hey, look, this is broken. Kids aren't learning in these environments. Let's advocate for change and get all the school buildings on par so that everybody, again, if we're going to advocate for the blueprint, we need to advocate for the environment as well.
I wonder if there's probably pressure to give some capital funding to every county. But if you're really going to prioritize need, you might argue that all of it should go to Baltimore City until those buildings are brought up to code. I mean, nobody's going to want to hear that, but you really, you know, or across the state, the 10% of the bottom, and I'm sure there are counties that aren't in there at all. So anyway, just a thought.
Joan, you raise a good point. You know, even when you talk about equity, I mean, you have to shine a light on historical inequity and the shape that some of these buildings are in, and it is criminal that some children go to school in some buildings that are in the condition that they're in. And what concerns me even greater is I've been in some schools that are a part of the 21st century development project where the schools are falling apart already. I mean, if you use substandard materials and if you use, sometimes the lowest bid or low cost gives you an inferior product. You know, you now tell me that this is a 21st century school and I go into this building and there are more things not working than are working, and there's a problem with that. You know, and each of us who might be responsible for a property would never accept, you know, the kind of work, the shoddy work that I've seen in you know, some places. And in some cases, it's not safe and it's not healthy. You know, they've designed some buildings where instead of elevators, they have lifts, but the lifts don't work. You know, I've watched children go up and down the steps on crutches because the lift is not working. You know, how equitable is that? And I guess the bigger question is who's monitoring it and whose responsibility it is. So it'll be interesting to see Dr. Starfstein's work, you know, in terms of, you know, what the overall plan, you know, looks like, and the number, I mean, and is there a scale, you know, that shows you, you know, which systems or which schools are in the greatest need of repair.
I wonder, Maya, if you have access to this year's capital budget and where the money went. I would just be curious to sort of see how it's going. I guess that goes through the I can never remember the name of the group. The group that's 3 people with the comptroller, the governor, and the
Public Works.
Yeah, Public Works. And I mean, there's some new people on there. Maybe it's an opportunity to get them to look at it differently.
Yeah.
Vicky? I think that's a great question too. I'm sorry, Vicky, I know you had your hand up. I'm so excited about this.
No, I mean, at the state level, you know, even under the former governor, it was the capital funding was under the Built to Learn Act. And, you know, at our county level, right, capital budgets and operating budgets, I don't know if they talk to each other, you know, whether it's our capital budget for schools. Yeah, we're in Baltimore County, they're actually talking about the 24, the 20, I think this summer, I think they introduced the capital budget for 24. I guess we're in 20, yeah, 23, 24. So it'll be 25, you know, and the county government has its own capital budget. So, you know, this is one case, I think Dr. Starfstein has brought together a very powerful argument.
Right.
That capital, the physical thing impacts learning. And that could be powerful.
Well, and they take bonds out to raise the money on capital budget.
Mhm,
who is then responsible for paying them off? Because if it's the localities,
mhm,
Baltimore City is going to have way less capability of doing that. So I
mhm,
think there's definitely areas to investigate.
mhm.
Absolutely. I'm
He
glad
also,
everyone.
he also mentioned PG County, so that
Right.
surprised me.
Mhm.
I think that's one of, it sounds like a great question to be asking our state legislators, you know, in terms of what their thinking is, or
Yep.
what they know, or what they
Yep.
can share, you know, as a way of shining a light on it, you know, to let them know that we're paying attention.
Right.
And we can also bring up with, right, if there's a committee in the state house, I don't know what's equivalent in the Senate, our up in northern Baltimore County, it's Michelle Guyton, it's an education, economics, and a third, you know, big categories, so.
Yeah.
I'm glad everyone is so excited about this.
I wonder whether they also considered you know, the density of the schools, because I mean, St. Mary's County, I mean, seemed high up on good conditions of the schools, but one of the problems that my daughter faced when she went to high school there was that she went to a school that was designed for 1,300 students, and at the time she went there, there were 2,000 students. So the school might have been in a better condition compared to many other schools, but I mean, this overcrowding certainly was a kind of very negative factor, you know, in the experience of many students.
Which is goes to class size. So if you want to lower your class size, you have to have buildings that can accommodate them.
Right. More rooms, different things like that. All of these things
Right.
that it's intersectional, and I think it's important, especially as advocates, that we think about it in that way, because a lot of times institutionally they are separated. So yay, thank you for all of these great thoughts. I am going to move us along because we have more conversation that we want to have. But before that, the next Blueprint Coalition meeting is Wednesday, May 10th. The link to attend, I can put that in the chat now, but that is also located in the May document that I posted earlier.
What time?
It's at 10 a.m. and that's a Wednesday. So as always, you and your team are welcome to join. And we talked a little bit about this as we were before introductions, but local implementation plans, we know they are out there and the AIB is reviewing them. They plan to finalize the review by July 1st. And we, Strong Schools Maryland, want to engage team leaders in the community and looking at these plans. So in your call survey, you will see, let us know if you would like to participate in reviewing your county's plan, and we will connect you and your team with our policy team, Maddie and Ria, Ria, who is especially leading that review. And the next outcome measures workshop will be tomorrow at 6 p.m. and we'll be covering Pillar 1. So if you haven't already, please register and join us and give us your input on what will success look like for early childhood education. And we will be going through all of the pillars this the second time we're going through. So we just want to make sure everybody gets a chance to review each pillar as you are able to attend. And with that, I want to turn it over to Joan, Worcester County team leader, whose team has been implementing an op-ed strategy with their local newspapers. So Joan, tell us a little bit about what your team has been doing. It's so exciting.
All right. One thing is we have very local papers. So for us, getting things in the paper is probably easier than for some of you where your main paper is the Baltimore Sun. But, and right now we have a push because it's the budget season, and typically our budget's fully funded, and there seems to be more tension this year than in past years. It's hard to figure out what's going on. So we're doing letters, and what we do is we monitor the articles. And when we see an article about a topic we want to put a letter in, we try to refer to that article because you have a better chance of getting it in if you're responding to them. And then we have a group of people that we have a few people that are willing to write letters, and a larger group of people who are willing to put their name on letters if somebody writes it for them. So we have like 3 main local papers. 2 of them are owned by the same people. So in this round with the budget, we've tried to get 1 in each paper. We got 1 in last week, and we had 2 submitted for this week. The papers haven't come out yet, and we have people lined up for the next week. So that's sort of the process we're trying to do. And you can either respond to an article or you could respond to a letter that somebody sent. So if I sent a letter, then Maya could send a letter and say, to add on to Joan's letter, you should know this, this, and this, and sort of get a chain. Or you might have people, which we do, who's you really want to disagree with what they're saying. So that's basically how we go about it. When you send the letter in, most of them taken by email now, and you have to put your name and address and phone number. I guess that and that's so they could follow up with you, I guess, if they wanted to. So far, that has not happened. I don't imagine that it does very often. But basically, that's been our strategy, and so far it's been working. So does anybody have any questions? Are other people having trouble with their budgets this year? As it's budget season?
I just heard all the chatter in Harford County about the budget and I'll call it the sign land. I mean, what do you call it? The line in the sand being drawn by the county executive and his battle with the school district. And that's one of the, I don't know if anybody's on here is from Harford County, but I have a bunch of interns in Howard County, and Harford County. And he's pushing back real hard, on the budget. But that's one of the things that led me to ask Dr. Starfstein the question about school funding, because with the blueprint, this is getting more and more confusing for me, or lay people like me who don't understand what these numbers mean and what they don't mean. And when Maya, we could put a pin in this and put it on another agenda, but when you asked about speakers being invited in, and they could be internal to Strong Schools, it could be where the people are who hold this knowledge base. But when I hear the county executive say things like Harford County can't afford the blueprint, or in Baltimore City, I hear people say that Baltimore City is being set up for failure with the blueprint because they can't meet the additional funding requirements. I want to know what that means.
And here's the thing, what's happening here is for some reason, we've had a really cooperative relationship between our school system and the county government. This year, the new president of the commissioner, who's been around for a while, has decided, to be a pain in the neck, maybe. I want a more detailed budget. We really need to know more. And it's not supposed to work that way. The county's supposed to say, we need this much, or the school board, the county's supposed to say, we'll either give you that much or we'll give you this much less, but they're not supposed to go in there and try to figure out. There were questions like, well, how many cars do people have on the staff and how many positions? And the county government's not supposed to be doing that. I think partly this year, I don't know, they got into sort of a toddler temper tantrum thing going on. But the other thing that's happened here is, according to our county commissioners, there's a $11 million deficit they have to make up. Last year, they said there was a $5 million deficit and they ended up with 11 million surplus. So they always underestimate the revenues, put a push on everybody to cut things out. And then, we have this extra money, so there's really, in many cases, no reason they can't. Especially, well, in our county, they could raise taxes, which they probably won't do, but because we have the lowest piggyback tax and lowest property tax in the state. So I think that's true. And I think the blueprint is a reason for counties to sort of whine and feel put upon, and they're making us do this. One of the things they brought up, well, they passed the teacher pension back to the county. I think they did that when I was still living in Prince George's County, and that was 30 years ago.
It's not new.
It's not new. It's like, get over it.
Yeah.
And I think they're going to be required to budget. This will be interesting. I think they're going to be required to do their budget differently now with the blueprint. That's what our finance person said. He said it's going to be set up differently after this year. I don't know what differently means. I don't know what's required. And maybe, Maya, you need to get the budget person at the State Department of Education to come, because I think we turn our budgets over to them at some point. There must be somebody there.
For me, for us to advocate intelligently about the blueprint, I want to be able to push back on some of these things, but I got to understand what it is I'm pushing back on. I know Baltimore City has always been, the victimized by restricted funding, and that's what I'm hearing in the field. Well, we can't do this because they only let us use the money to do this, or they only let us, but I thought that the blueprint plan was the opportunity for school districts to identify how they were going to use the money, based on which pillar the money was assigned to. I just want to understand better, and maybe the next conversation, for us is with the CEO, so she can help us identify, that's, Joan, that's what's holding us up with the position paper, that we have some questions to ask her first, so we can write into our position paper things that make sense, because we don't only want to do it with her, we want to move it and push it out to our legislative representatives to let them know what we're advocating for.
What would be interesting is if people would share the questions they have, because I'm sure they're the same questions, and that we could ask different people. Probably people are more responsive in different counties. And if we asked our county and got an answer from them, we could probably piece together a better idea of what's happening.
Yeah.
I mean, in a small county like this, now that we've been going to school board meetings, they know us, and I can actually send an email to the financial guy and he'll answer me, which I don't know how true that is in the larger counties, which it may or may not be. But I think it'll be interesting for all of us to what questions do we have, and sort of compare notes and see if we can't figure it out.
I think that's a good idea, even for us to pool our questions, because the answer is likely to be similar if it's not the same, across school districts. But when I hear, and I've talked to a number of principals, and, when I hear people say, I'm having trouble spending my concentration of poverty money, that pains me. I mean, you're in a poor school, in a poor school district. What is it? Why are you having trouble spending it? Because that's what we need to unpack. Because if there's a barrier there that's not allowing you to use that money for the things that you've identified, then that's where we can add voice. you know?
Right.
I think I have.
There should be a paper or some type of guideline available to know what's included in all of us to make sure we ticked off everything that should be so that we could use it.
Yeah.
Use the funds.
Yeah, I have heard from community school coordinators that there is some hold up in the procurement of the money that they're trying to spend on in the schools. So I definitely have heard that. And it's like internal, and depending on who is running the community schools, which is a whole complex thing. We could have Ellie Mitchell come and break that down for us.
Well, if some of the money's for teachers too, is like the person in the school doesn't have the power to do that. Like, how's it appropriated? Your concentration of poverty grant, is it for materials? Is it for teachers? Is it for social services? It would be nice to know that.
That's right.
Yeah. So sorry, I know we started with op-eds and
It's okay.
but I actually the community update or county updates portion, I did have the question of are there any updates in regards to your county's local education budget? Jamal, the new organizer for our team who just left, and I and the whole team really have been just ears to the ground when it comes to what's happening in Harford County, to try and figure out how it is that the county exec is able to do what he's doing. And there is a I believe it's either a board of ed or a county council meeting that is tomorrow evening that we will be attending and speaking at to put some pressure on both the county executive and the county council, who also has the power to kind of negotiate with the county executive when it comes to
What is it they want to do? What does the county executive want to do?
So he is slashing the education budget there through a loophole that was an amendment to a bill 2 sessions ago. And it is allowing him, so essentially the thought process behind the bill was there's a lot of extra funds coming in, especially from COVID, to education that may not be sustainable. So counties could have some kind of like flexibility where 1 year they're able to lower their maintenance of effort in order to like stay on task, stay on budget, and account for all of the extra money, less money things going on. So he was at the time in the legislative branch. I'm sorry, it's late. And has then an in-depth knowledge of the bill, the amendment, and has used it to his advantage to lower the budget by when you total it all together, we're hearing 70 million. I know. But so it's kind of like that operating versus like there's different kind of buckets, but it is something that will have an impact on
well, in theory, the school system puts a budget out, and then the county either approves it or doesn't approve it at whatever level to make up whatever. But what our county government seems to be implying they want to do is to be able to have line item veto over what's in the school system budget. And what should happen is if you don't want to fund it, tell the school system what you're not funding it by, and then they have to go back and figure it out. But a lot of it, 92% of the budget in Worcester County is salaries. So it's not that there's that much to cut. And, you know, a lot of it's been negotiated with the teachers union already. So to some extent, this has to do with the relationship of the superintendent to the county government.
That is very true. All of these relationships are very complex. And who holds power in what way.
Right.
But I just, right, in the interest of time and stuff, want to make sure did anyone who has not shared updates or what's going on in their county want to share? And I apologize for my dog. Rich, yes.
This is a little bit off topic and shifting gears. Myself and a few other parent advocates made an appointment with the new special education directors here in Anne Arundel County and Dr. Bedell, our new superintendent. And some of the issues that we've been talking with him about are related to the blueprint and how special education is being implemented locally in our county. And then hopefully we can open up that conversation to a wider audience and see, well, we want the state superintendent to convene the work group on special ed. So that would be really nice. But there doesn't really seem to be inconsistency in how the money's spent or how the resources are utilized at each district. And we'd like to see a little bit of consistency. And we figured we'd start locally and then work statewide on that issue.
Yeah, thank you for that update. And to that point, it is written in the MSDE plan that they will have the work group. So I know that there was some kind of like, okay, tension around, will they have the work group, will they not? But it is written in their plan. So
yeah, well, the AIB gave the directive to the state superintendent. It's up to him now to put a good faith effort toward convening the work group and doing a good job like they did with the English language learners work group. And we're a little bit worried that they're not going to do that. They're, not going to put their best foot forward. And we're a little concerned because that implementation for the next 10 years affects, every kid in usually the lowest performing categories. So if the blueprint truly is going to be successful, we have to include everyone.
What's going on? There seemed to be some controversy up there with Chowdhury, and is it the board or what the heck's going on there?
He's not
yeah,
making any friends. He's not making any allies. He's burning bridges with a lot of people. And because of that, he doesn't have the staff to fully implement what he's supposed to be doing. Not enough people are staying there at MSDE to implement the blueprint or to put policies in place. We can't even get from Marcella, who was the former state superintendent who managed special education, a replacement for her. And she's been gone since December. There's a big hole there to be filled. He can't fill the role. And he and the board, right, the state board are going, and with the AIB are going to be at odds over the special education work group in a number of issues. He's got to make friends, and he's got to learn how to build bridges and mend fences with people, and he's not doing that so far.
yeah, there are a number.
Is that something Wes Moore, the governor, or Runa Miller could advise him on? Wes Moore knows how to make friends.
Yeah, there are definitely a number of, even the community schools director at the state level still vacant. So those are crucial positions, and they also need staff. That is the thing. It can't just be the director. So there's
I know that there's a parent group in Carroll County that's called for his impeachment.
interesting.
It was over the HB 119, right? Carroll County sort of what drove that bill in the first place on the health curriculum.
Is that right? I don't know about that, Joan. You have to tell me about it.
Somebody said to me that they weren't implementing the health curriculum. So basically that bill was designed so to make them implement it, but it blew up everywhere else because it allowed the right-wing groups to come out, and they think it didn't pass, so they think they won. However, it didn't pass because Mabe basically doesn't want the legislature to mess with any curriculum.
Right.
And it didn't pass because of that. It's not that the health curriculum has gone away. Hopefully they won't be able to figure that out too soon, but
I'll look it up. I'll let you know what the chatter is in the background.
oh God. But we have, as I said, one of our county commissioners at the end called for a forensic audit of our school system budget. Like, really? Hopefully there's only one of her.
And do you have any updates from St. Mary's? Did you already share?
Not really. I think, it kind of makes me aware that we should probably be talking about the budget also. I mean, we have the same issue that, the commissioners complain that there is not enough money, and then in the end, there is always more money than can be used. And I heard something, but just yesterday, and I don't think it can be true, that there is no money for the 3-year-olds, and Head Start has been dismantled because with the blueprint, it's no longer needed because of the universal preschool. But if if there is no funding for the 3-year-olds, then the result is going to be that at-risk students who are in Head Start will no longer be able to go to school until they are 4. So, I mean, that seems a little bit, well, someone told me yesterday and I couldn't believe it, so I have to verify before reporting on it any further. I mean, we have been concentrating on reading scores. We became aware of, well, I mean, they are still relatively high compared to other counties, but, there is only about 40% or less than 50% of students that are proficient in reading and math. So we want to address that with the school system. And then we have an issue that with parent involvement, that if you ask the schools, then they will say, well, we are very welcoming, but the parents just don't respond. If you talk to the parents, it's the opposite, that they are not welcomed by the school when involvement is concerned. And so we know that many parents don't even know, for example, that their children are reading years below grade level, that the schools don't really communicate that effectively to the parents. And then we have been talking about diversity, where also the schools will say that they do everything they can, but the reports about diversity made it clear that they don't follow up on recommendations that, for example, the NAACP makes. So those are kind of the main issues that we have been focusing on. But we haven't really talked about the budget at our last couple of meetings, so we probably have to.
Well, thank you. That's helpful. I do remember you saying that they put something in about like taking recommendations from the NAACP.
Yes,
but-
yes, that they had good relationships with the NAACP, but the NAACP had made a number of recommendations. I mean, the problem is that they kind of keep promoting and hiring from within the system, as is the system is not diverse. You know, the people that are hired over the more diverse candidates that they could hire are always white in St. Mary's County. And so most teachers of color have experience with applying for things and not being considered for a variety of reasons, but it's a kind of common experience.
Thank you for that update. I think it's good to get all these kind of updates and like what's going on, what needs to be done, what's the struggle right now, into perspective. Because we have the tour coming up, the Tour for Maryland's Future, and we are trying to gain all of the momentum this summer going into next session. Believe it or not, the work has to start now. So we are going to be going on tour, as we say, around the state, and we need your help when it comes to community events that are existing, that like every year, every summer, we all go out to Artscape or whatever in Baltimore City, like different things that are happening in your community that you're aware of. It could be your church community, whatever it is. We want to engage with more folks, inform more folks about the blueprint, and get them involved, whether it is through joining your team, doing some one-off kind of advocacy. We want to make sure that we are expanding our network so that we can have folks ready to gear up and go with us to Annapolis, who know what the blueprint is and what they can demand from legislators, and also make moves at the local level. Yes, and cookouts is exactly a part of what our plan is and what our team is trying to do. So we are currently in the planning phase. So I don't want to divulge too much, but we need your help when it comes to finding out about different events, different venues. If you want to co-host an event, we can certainly do that. We did that last summer. She's not on the call, but like Sabrina, when she was starting her team, had like a party in her backyard and invited folks to come over. We gave a spiel about the blueprint and ways to get involved, and they started their team right there. And you saw them at Annapolis, and they came out in full force. So it's activities like that, fun events, where we're also offering information that can get folks excited and engaged to advocate alongside us. So if you also have community partners in mind, I know we're trying to meet with the library to see if there's some giveaway items we can have at our different cookouts and stuff like that to attract more folks. We are also interested in canvassing, especially areas around community schools. Like Anne was talking about, that disjointed communication between the community and between the school system. We want to try to bridge that gap, because that's what we need, that gap to be bridged so that we can work together to implement the blueprint. So thank you for your recommendations, and I look forward to more of them. Please put them in the survey as well that I will be putting in the chat now. So the call survey is going to look a little different. It's just more so indicating different ways you want to get involved, whether that is helping with the policy team and reviewing your county's local implementation plan. If you have already reviewed the local implementation plan, I know, Anne, you talked about your team going over it. If you have feedback, send it my way. And I will forward that feedback to the policy team, to Rhea, to integrate into the analysis that she's doing right now. She's working super hard to put it all together so that there can be central themes, different quotes from different reports pulled out from all the counties, just to see what has arisen and what we can advocate for across the state together. So yeah, that is our call. And once you complete the survey, do you see the survey in the chat, everyone? Okay. Once you complete the survey, feel free to go and enjoy the rest of your evening. If you have any questions about the tour, about anything that we discussed this meeting, please stay back, let me know. I also forgot to mention the session wrap up. It is on its way. Dave and Maddie are working together to wrap that up. So that will be hitting your inboxes. So we can strategize about what we learned and where we're going. So yeah, thank you so much for the call.